Susan Robin Bender was born on November 27th, 1970 in Modesto, California, as the only child of Patricia Chupka Bender. On April 25th, 1986, Susan, then 15 years old, left her family home to visit friends in Carmel by the sea for the weekend. She walked to the Greyhound bus station on 10th Street and G Street. While waiting for the bus, Susan ran into friends. She told them about her excursion to the coast and that she planned to be back in a few days. After their conversation ended, Susan made a call at the Depot payphone. About 10 minutes later, a full-size olive green 1977 Ford van pulled up. Susan got into the vehicle. This was the last time that Susan was seen. She had a lot of freedom for a 15-year-old, which was not terribly uncommon in the 1980s. Pat Bender, Susan's mother, assumed that Susan had safely made it to Carmel and was having fun with her friends. When Susan failed to call home as she usually did, her mother became worried. She reported her daughter missing on May 1st, 1986. Detectives soon came to the conclusion that something terrible had happened to Susan. One detective told the local newspaper, "We have certain evidence to indicate foul play was involved in the disappearance of Susan Bender." Susan's mother told the same newspaper that Susan had run away twice before, but each time she had returned home in fairly short order. She said everything had been good between us for a couple of months before she disappeared. There was no indication that she was going to run away. She added that an unnamed male person of interest had been found with Susan's diary, phone book, and clothing in his possession. Pat continued, "I am afraid she was attacked by a man the police questioned but never arrested. They did not arrest him even though they had a lot of circumstantial evidence against him." Police always believed Susan was not missing of her own volition. Detective Richard Ryer, who was assigned to the case until his retirement in 2000, told a newspaper in 1987 that he thought Susan was most likely not alive anymore. In 1999, Susan's mother said in an interview, "The police said there is little they can do without a body." Detective Rie commented in that same year, "Susan Bender just fell off the face of the earth. What is really strange about this case is that nothing has ever come up about her in all these years, and no one has ever come forward with any information about what happened to her." Also in 1999, Lauren Herzog and Wesley Shermatine, two childhood friends from Linden, California, targeted young women in and around the nearby Stockton area. There was some speculation that perhaps Susan was one of their victims. Many of their victims have never been identified. Authorities did not know if the men had anything to do with Susan's abduction. But it is possible as she vanished in the time that they were busy with their evil deeds. Susan's disappearance fit their modus operandi for victims, but despite years of investigation into Herzog and Shermantine's crimes, there had never been a link to Susan's case. They went on a spree in the 1980s and 1990s. They took the lives of several females and may have had more than 15 victims. In the meantime, Susan's case remained unsolved for nearly 4 decades. Investigators spoke to family and friends who fought to keep Susan's story alive. Sandy Silveri, a friend of Susan, commented in 2021, "Where is she? What happened to her? Whoever did this, they have to be held accountable." In October 2021, the Modesto Police Department announced that they reopened the case in the hopes of finally locating the long-lost teenager. The department said in a statement, "In reviewing this case, we identified potential areas of opportunity which may assist in moving this case forward. This includes the use of advancements in technology. Given the circumstances of the crime, we also believe there may be individuals previously unidentified who may have pertinent information surrounding Susan's disappearance." Modesto's cold case investigators were hoping that the many years since Susan's disappearance had increased witnesses' willingness to speak out. The police department said it in a statement in 2022. "It is important to remember that Susan was a child with a family. Unfortunately, that family has gone 36 years without closure or justice. It is our job as an agency to assist in providing some level of closure with the ultimate goal of getting justice." Then on Thursday, August 17th, 2023, the Modesto Police Department announced the arrest of Raymond Lewis Stafford. He is 76 years old. Stafford was arrested on August 15th in Wills Point, 50 miles east of Dallas, where he had been living for around 5 years. Stafford appeared to be hiding in plain sight for decades. Detectives got an arrest warrant on August 10th, but it was not until Tuesday that members of the Van Zandt County Sheriff's Department in Texas showed up at his home and took him into custody. He was arrested without incident and subsequently booked into the Van Zandt County Jail and charged with taking Susan's life. Modesto police did not give further details about what they believe happened to Susan. Stafford is currently incarcerated in Texas awaiting extradition to California. Exactly how detectives zeroed in on Stafford as a suspect has not been detailed. Modesto police are deferring questions to the Stanislaus County District Attorney's Office, saying there was no other information they could release. Newspapers and local radio stations did reach out to the Modesto Police Department and Stanislaus County District Attorney to learn what led to the suspect's arrest, but did not receive a response. No information was released about how exactly Susan might have met her end, whether there is any chance of recovering her body, or what new evidence resulted in the charges against Stafford. In a news release, Modesto police expressed their gratitude to the Stanislaus County District Attorney's Office, the California Department of Justice, and various Texas authorities for their help in the long and challenging investigation. It said the collaborative efforts of these agencies have been instrumental in bringing closure to Susan Robin Bender's case. As detectives suspected foul play right from the start. They had a suspect nearly from the start. According to court records filed in Stanislaus County, investigators at the time traced the green van to Stafford after he was arrested on suspicion of an unrelated burglary a month after Susan vanished. He had not been publicly named at the time. In the course of their investigation, they learned that Stafford had briefly worked with Susan's mother Patricia Bender at the time. She said that she believed Stafford may have formed a relationship with her daughter after calling their home phone. Court documents showed that Pat worked for Stafford for a few days back in 1985 at his security business. They also said she admitted to dating Stafford on a few occasions. Thus, Stafford was well known to Susan. It was his rental van, which Susan had been seen getting into at the bus stop. She got into his van without hesitation, according to her friend who witnessed everything the day of her disappearance at the bus station. A woman who lived with Stafford in the 1980s said he confessed that he strangled a female with a cord or wire and buried her near the Big Oak Flat entrance to Yosemite. He said, according to court records obtained, that he drove to a campground near the Big Oak Flat entrance to Yosemite National Park and dug the grave less than a year after Susan disappeared. Stafford, then 38, ran from Modesto City Council in July 1985. He was asked by the local newspaper about his criminal record, but told the paper it was a result of him being in the wrong place at the wrong time. His arrests were listed as operating an unlicensed private investigator business and carrying a badge saying he was a private investigator. Stafford said that his campaign was focused on policies to protect children from predators. He added, "We do not spend any time getting the people who are harassing our children." Unsurprisingly, he lost the election. 5 months later, in December 1986, Stafford was convicted of setting a business on fire and pled guilty to making a false police report. He reportedly faked a kidnapping to avoid appearing in court. In 1994, he emerged once again on law enforcement's radar. He was put on an offenders register under the alias Greg Tunning Lee for abusing a 13-year-old girl in California. New court records identified the man as Stafford. Pat revealed she always suspected Stafford was behind her daughter's disappearance after she discovered the pair had carried on a secret relationship. Pat said, "I have known. I have known from the start when my daughter came up missing. I have known that he was the person responsible. The investigators did not listen to me." Pat added that that thought had lived with her for the past 37 years. She continued, "It was like I was lost, honestly. It was like I was the walking deceased woman. It hurt when I heard people talking about their grandkids and their kids." Pat said the memories of her 15-year-old daughter were what kept her going. She remembered Susan was outgoing. She was funny. She was just an average teenager, just trying to figure out where she fits. Pat never lost hope. But the quest to find her daughter was agonising until now. She said she has had to lean on her faith. She stated, "I'm grateful. I'm glad that the system has finally decided to step up and do something instead of have me wondering." Those closest to Susan hoped to learn where she is in hopes of giving her the farewell they always felt she deserved. Now in the final act, her mother says the one thing she has never wrestled with is forgiveness towards Stafford. "I know this is going to sound kind of strange, but I have forgiven him for what he did to my daughter. I really have, because I would not want to carry that with me for the rest of my life," Pat said. This arrest has lifted a dark cloud from her shoulders. "Now, I am not looking forward to how the trial will play out. I just want Susan's body found," she concluded. My message is a simple one. Start listening to your kids. Megan McDonald, born in 1983, relocated to Middletown, New York with her parents at the tender age of 7 months. She shared a close bond with her sister Karen and 2 younger brothers, with whom she experienced everything from Little League games to movie nights. The sisters Megan and Karen were inseparable best friends. Known for her compassion, Megan often rescued stray animals and displayed remarkable warmth even towards adults. As Karen entered college, she found love with James Wayne. When James nervously faced the prospect of meeting Karen's family for the first time, 16-year-old Megan effortlessly alleviated his anxiety. Her genuine warmth and hospitality made him feel like an immediate member of the family, setting a comfortable tone for their future interactions. Megan possessed a vibrant imagination, evident in her decision to name the family cat Pumpkin, a choice made to ensure James Wayne felt fully integrated into the family dynamic. After graduating from Burke Catholic High School in the class of 2000, Megan pursued her education at SUNY Orange in Middletown. Opting for the proximity to her home, Megan found joy in attending the community college. Fueled by her affection for children, she contemplated a career that would allow her regular interaction with them. In 2002, Megan and her family faced a profound loss with the unexpected passing of her father, Dennis McDonald, a retired detective from the New York Police Department who succumbed to a heart attack at the age of 47. Despite the tragedy, the family continued to unite, gathering for Christmas that year, unaware that would mark Megan's final holiday season with them. A poignant family video captures the moment when Megan joyfully unwraps a box of sweaters, exuding warmth and gratitude as she playfully places the bow on her head, showcasing her genuine and gracious spirit. Megan secured her initial job around the same period, marking the commencement of her efforts to rebuild her life following her father's passing. Karen fondly remembered the moment Megan bought coffee with her own hard-earned money, a proud reflection of her accomplishments in that inaugural job. Realising she could forge ahead, Megan made a significant decision a year after her father's passing. In March 2003, she took a leap towards independence by signing a lease for an apartment near Middletown in the quaint town of Wallkill, New York. Eager to embark on her journey as an adult, Megan's newfound freedom was unfortunately brief. On March 13, 2003, Megan, employed at the American Cafe in Galleria Mall, diligently waited tables from 10:0 and to 3:00 following her shift. She strolled to a nearby bank's ATM for a cash withdrawal. Right precisely 3 p.m, she was spotted on Greenway Terrace in Wallkill, New York. Despite being invited to a birthday party by acquaintances, Megan declined, citing plans with other friends in Middletown. Little did she know that this decision would shape the events to come. Later evening, Megan spent time at a friend's house, engrossed in the TV show Friends from 7:30 p.m. to 12:00 a.m. When she left her friend's place, she mentioned the need for a good night's sleep to avoid being tardy for work the next day. Unbeknownst to her friend, this would be their final meeting. Rather than heading directly home, Megan made a detour to attend a birthday party in the Greenway Terrace area of Wallkill. As she waited in her car, 2 departing friends engaged in a brief conversation with her. Megan informed them that she was expecting to meet someone. At 12:38, just after midnight, Megan McDonald was last seen alive by anyone. Megan failed to appear for her afternoon shift at the American Cafe, prompting concerned colleagues to leave voicemails on her phone. Growing anxious as she remained out of touch, her friends and family observed her unresponsiveness to calls and text messages, fearing the worst. Megan's mother enlisted Karen to check on her. Initially annoyed by what seemed like irresponsibility, Karen and James Wan's concern deepened throughout the day, compounded by their inability to locate her despite living 2 hours away from her last known whereabouts. As daylight transitioned to night, their apprehension intensified, culminating in devastating news the following day. In a shocking discovery, a man and his nephew stumbled upon a distressing scene at 229 Bowser Road in the town of Wallkill. Horrified to find the lifeless body of a young woman lying at an unusual angle, they promptly dialed 911. Upon arriving at the scene, the New York State Police successfully identified the deceased individual as 20-year-old Megan McDonald by examining her driver's license. A subsequent autopsy revealed that Megan had succumbed to fatal injuries inflicted by a blunt object. Detective Brad Natalizio provided additional details, describing the location near Bowser Road as a narrow dirt trail culminating in a secluded cul-de-sac within an isolated field. The detective surmised that Megan must have been acquainted with the person who led her there. Given the perilous nature of venturing alone to such a remote location at night, it became apparent that Megan was in the company of someone she trusted, who tragically took her life. Investigations by the state police uncovered that Megan owned a 1991 Mercury Sable, although the vehicle was not present at the crime scene. Consequently, a search was initiated to locate her car. Local law enforcement sought media coverage to aid in unravelling the mystery surrounding Megan's death. Days later, a tip led the police to the Kensington Manor apartment complex, where Megan's vehicle was discovered parked. The examination uncovered that the vehicle had been stationed there since the early morning, approximately at 8:00 am on March 14th, indicating an extended period of presence. It was apparent that the driver hastily departed, leaving behind a trail of Investigators amassed a substantial amount of evidence, seizing numerous items pivotal for a comprehensive DNA analysis. More than 700 items were meticulously bagged and stored for further examination. It was deduced that an individual occupied the driver's seat of Megan's car and inflicted a fatal blow upon her. Despite initial efforts, the case stagnated without additional leads, leaving Megan's fate shrouded in mystery for an extended period. Detectives Brad Natalizio and Michael Carletta, who were familiar with the missing woman due to their upbringing in the area, recognised Megan's case as the most significant local enigma in a considerable span. 2 decades later, on the somber 20th anniversary of Megan's tragic demise, her case gained prominence on the widely watched TV show Dateline. The broadcast sparked renewed efforts in solving the mystery. In 2018, the FBI's Behavioural Analysis Unit took charge of the investigation, seeking to profile the suspect and formulate a coherent theory. After a meticulous review of crime scene and autopsy photos, coupled with an exhaustive examination of case files containing over 800 leads and interviews, their conclusions aligned with those reached at Troop F Barracks on Crystal Run Road in Walkill. The assailant displayed the classic traits of narcissistic personality disorder, as outlined in the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. This includes a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, fantasy behaviour, a constant need for admiration, and a lack of empathy manifesting in various contexts from early adulthood. Detectives Natalizio and Carletta took on the case in 2017, armed with valuable insights from local narratives they had absorbed during their upbringing. Natalizio, who shared Megan's age and hailed from Orange County, had a long-standing commitment to solving her case. Even after changing jobs, he continued to pursue justice for Megan, fostering collaboration across different departments and engaging the community. Having joined the NIP in 2006, Natalizio's personal connection to the case was deepened by his wife, a registered nurse who worked alongside Megan's mother. This familial tie served as a motivating factor, particularly as his wife encouraged him to resolve Megan's case upon any promotion. The investigative duo initiated the process by re-interviewing all witnesses and suspects. Their journey led them back to Kensington Manor Apartments, where they uncovered intriguing details. Around 12:30 am on the night of Megan's tragic demise, a witness noticed her distinctive white car with a black stripe. What drew the witness's attention, however, was the thunderous music emanating from the vehicle system, prompting her to investigate further. Megan's vehicle had a dark Honda Civic hatchback, tailing it as they both navigated the large loop within the complex. The persistent thumping music echoed through the surroundings as both cars circled back. This established a timeline, indicating Megan's last known presence at 12:30 am, narrowing the window for the crime to have occurred between 12:30 and 0. The prevailing theory suggested that 2 individuals in the trailing car somehow infiltrated Megan's vehicle, with one assailant in the back seat and a companion in the passenger seat, exerting a level of control over Megan, possibly on a psychological level. The journey led them to a secluded field off Bowser Road, a hidden spot known for gatherings of teenagers and young adults. The entrance was discreet, easily overlooked by the uninitiated, yet the assailant navigated unerringly, aware that the isolated area ensured minimal risk of detection. The silence in the surroundings was so profound that even the distant hum of a train engine could be heard from the spot. An altercation possibly ensued between Megan and the assailant, escalating into a violent rage. The assailant repeatedly struck her with a blunt object in this desolate location. The passenger seated beside Megan likely found themselves in a state of shock. Despite the gravity of the situation, the assailant managed to dissuade them from reporting the incident to the authorities. After disposing of her remains, the two individuals returned Megan's car to its parking spot before fleeing the scene. Investigative efforts focused on examining items taken from Megan's vehicle, with the Cybergenetics private lab assigned to re-evaluate the DNA in 2023, testing the latest forensic technology advancements. Lamar Advertising, a company committed to promoting Megan, generously supported her visibility. They sponsored 7 billboards along State Route 17 in Orange and Sullivan counties, as well as on Interstate 84 in Orange County, encouraging individuals with any information to step forward. In the pursuit of justice, the New York PD Detectives Union and the FBI took significant steps by offering rewards totaling $220,000 for information related to Megan's case. Before conclusive DNA results emerged, the distinctive Honda Civic with a powerful audio system came to the forefront. This led investigators to identify 2 suspects, one notably being Megan's ex-boyfriend, Edward Holly, while the second suspect remained unnamed in public records. Surprisingly, it was later disclosed that the second suspect had passed away in 2010. An intriguing detail emerged as investigators uncovered a voicemail left by him on Megan's phone at 1:24 a.m. on March 9, 2003, featuring loud music in the background. Financial records added another layer to the mystery, revealing Megan's account balance of $21.92 after depositing $1158.33 into her HSBC account. However, on March 10th, she overdrafted the account by $869.90 in 3 transactions. In his interviews, Holly confessed to owing Megan $300 for her assistance in purchasing a sought-after purple 1990 Honda Civic hatchback. This car became pivotal in the unfolding events. On the fateful day of the crime, Megan engaged in a confrontation with Edward Holly, a fact he acknowledged in all his police interviews. Additional information surfaced when Megan's landlord stepped forward. On March 13, 2003, at around 9:00 am, the landlord witnessed a man in Megan's apartment on Karen Drive, whose identity remains undisclosed in official documents. Approximately an hour later, Megan dropped him off at his residence on Sheffield Drive in Wallkill before heading to work. The decision to forego the party on Greenway Terrace was intriguingly linked to Edward Holly's presence at the event. Investigation into the matter revealed that Megan, in her quest for marijuana, contacted various sources. 5:57 p.m, followed by another at 11:25 p.m, but was unsuccessful in securing any substance. At 12:05 am, a witness observed her at AT Gas Station on 152 Wisner Avenue in Middletown, requesting a Dutch, slang for a marijuana cigarette. Although her car was parked outside, the witness noted no occupants. Megan persistently contacted a second suspect throughout the night. The final call at 12:25 am involved her picking him up at his residence on Cindy Lane in Wallkill, seated in the passenger seat. He informed her of his lack of marijuana supply, prompting Megan to express her intention to obtain it from Edward Holly. Witnesses observed Holly leaving the party shortly before midnight on March 13th. Just after the clock struck midnight on March 14th, both Holly and Megan's phones registered signals from the towers in the Scotchtown area of Wallkill. This time frame aligned with when officers suspected Megan encountered her assailant. Although Holly acknowledged knowing that Megan was outside the party, he insisted he went directly home to 66 Sandberg Court in Wallkill. Contradicting his claim, both cell phone tower data and eyewitness accounts placed him near the crime scene. With a history of domestic violence, Holly had a compelling motive to harm Megan, owing her a significant amount of money. The FBI's Behavioural Analysis Unit played a crucial role in piecing together the intricate details of the case. One plausible scenario suggested a disagreement between Holly and the outspoken Megan, a theory supported by Megan's sister Karen. The possibility loomed that Megan and her ex-partner engaged in a heated dispute resulting in a violent outburst. Megan's final outgoing call at 12:30 was to Holly, who asserted it was a request for marijuana. However, this positioned Holly as the last person to have seen her alive. Considering his checkered history, his locations at the time, and his failure to disclose his presence with Megan during the critical time frame, Holly emerged as a significant and viable suspect in the investigation. On April 20th, 2023, Edward Holly was apprehended by the New York State Police and charged with second-degree murder in connection to the death of Megan. Poor Holly, who had lost the use of his legs in a 2007 car crash, was already incarcerated for probation violations related to a narcotics case in October 2021. Now, 42 years old, Holly would have been 22 at the time of Megan's tragic demise. As he was being wheeled away in an orange jumpsuit, Holly vehemently protested his innocence to the cameras, declaring his love for Megan. His two daughters rushed to his side in a show of support, while the McDonnell family, shouting justice for Megan, expressed their grief. The second suspect in the case reportedly took his own life, and the police have yet to release his name. Regrettably, due to a procedural error by the prosecutors, Holly was released without bail. This mistake stemmed from a failure to present the case to a grand jury within the required time frame. Despite this, Holly had to make court appearances in June and August. His next hearing is scheduled for after Thanksgiving, and if convicted, he could face 25 years to life in prison. Megan's family found solace in the identification of the man responsible for her untimely death. While Karen lamented that her younger sister would never witness the series finale of her favourite show Friends, the family expressed gratitude for the chance to bid her a proper farewell. They acknowledged the rarity of such swift recovery of the body, contrasting with cases where closure is delayed. A 16-year-old girl who lived in the same house as her parents and younger sisters had gone to sleep in her room, and in the morning she was found dead. The police immediately realised they were dealing with a murder, but none of her relatives heard anything that night. It took 31 years to finally solve the case, but no one was prepared for this turn of events. Fawn Cox was born March 24, 1973 in Kansas City, Missouri. Her appearance soon followed that of two more daughters. The family lived in a small two-storey house located in a rough residential neighbourhood. From an early age, she helped her parents take care of the younger children, went to church regularly and enjoyed swimming. When she turned 16, Fawn got a part-time job at a local amusement park. Her family lived quite poorly, and the girl sought to earn at least some money in her spare time from school. She spent most of the summer vacations of 1989 at work. Mostly the girls stood behind the cash register and sold tickets to amusement rides. On Wednesday, July 26th, she finished her shift at about 10 p.m. Her mother and younger sister picked her up in the car, as it would have taken a long time to get from the park to her home on public transportation. Almost immediately after returning home, Fawn went to bed since she had to go to work again. The next morning, the girl slept on the second floor. She had her own room. Her sisters usually slept in the next room, but that night she was alone on the floor. Her sister Amber, who was only a year younger, was babysitting for a familiar family that night. The other sister, Felicia, decided to sleep on the first floor because it was much cooler there. It was a very hot night and the only air conditioner working was downstairs. Their parents also slept on the first floor. The next morning at about 9 o'clock, the whole family woke up to the sound of the alarm clock in Fawn's room, but the girl wouldn't turn it off for some reason. Then her younger sister and mother went up to her room, where a horrible sight awaited them. Fawn lay on the bed with no sign of life. Her neck was visibly bruised. The girl also had no pulse, and her parents immediately called an ambulance, but they were no longer able to help her. It was apparent that Fawn had passed away hours before. After examining her body, medical experts determined that strangulation was the cause of death, and the girl had also been abused. From the first hours, the police realised they had a very difficult investigation ahead of them. Despite the fact that Fawn was killed right in her room in a small house with very poor soundproofing, her parents and sister heard absolutely nothing. However, there was an explanation. The air conditioner on the first floor was old and very loud, blocking out any other noise in the house. The only strange thing that night was noticed by Fawn's sister. Their poodle was behaving anxiously and barking, but they did not pay much attention to it. This behaviour was attributed to the fact that the dog was pregnant. After examining the scene, the Police made several important discoveries. Their theory was that the attacker or group had entered the house through a second-story window overlooking the backyard. There was an old trailer parked near the house that could easily be used to climb up to the canopy of the outbuilding, which was almost level with the window. The window itself had been left open because there was no air conditioning on the second floor and one had to fight the heat somehow. In Fawn's room, the experts found the first important clues. A few short hairs, small bloodstains, and traces of semen on the sheet from her bed. All of this was sent to the lab for analysis. In addition, several items were missing from the house, including radios, a Nintendo game console, and a stereo recorder. As several other items were found on the ground in front of the house, it looked as if the burglar had thrown them out the window to take them with him, but left them there for some reason. Detectives also found that various items had been removed from a closet in an adjoining room on the second floor. They believed the perpetrator was hiding in that closet while waiting for everyone in the house to go to sleep. Normally, Fawn's sister slept in that room, but not that night. For this reason, no one noticed the items on display. The police discovered another strange clue. An old army cap was found in Fawn's room. All her relatives said they'd never seen the girl wearing it, so detectives assumed the killer might have forgotten the cap at the scene. Despite the impressive array of evidence, police were unable to quickly identify the suspects. The problem is that in 1989, DNA forensics was rather underdeveloped and there were no common genetic databases at that time. Detective Benjamin Caldwell, who handled the case, put forward the main version of what happened in his opinion. There could have been several assailants and they must have known the house well. Not only did they know how to get to the second floor through the backyard in total darkness, but they must also have known the layout of the rooms. The next step for the police was to look for witnesses. They interviewed neighbours, friends and relatives of Fawn, but all were inconclusive. The detectives had one weighty problem before them. The neighbourhood in which the house was located was very poor and criminal. Various criminal gangs operated there, and their participants were quite difficult to bring to justice. A month after Fawn's murder, the case finally got off the ground. The police had a witness who pointed them to 3 suspects. This witness knew a number of important details that the police never divulged, so his story was taken seriously. The suspects were 3 teenagers, one of whom was in the same class as Fawn. They were arrested and questioned, but the boys denied any involvement in the murder. During a search of one of their homes, police found items stolen from the victim's room. This was enough to charge all 3 of them with murder. But even here, the detectives were disappointed. First, the witness suddenly recanted and stopped cooperating with the police. Second, DNA analysis of blood, hair and semen found at the crime scene did not show an unambiguous match with the suspect's samples. In those years, experts could not yet establish an exact match of the samples and all of their tests showed questionable results. In other words, the analysis could not confirm either a full match or a guaranteed mismatch. Despite this, the police were able to obtain useful information from one of the detainees. During one of the interrogations, he confessed that he had indeed broken into Fawn's house that night in the company of other boys and stolen some things. He recounted how he made his way to the second floor, through the canopy of the canopy, and even revealed unknown details. According to him, when he threw a tape recorder out the window, its handle fell off. A boy hid under a nearby bush, and the police did find the item in that very spot. Except that the young man quickly retracted his statement and no longer cooperated with the investigation, which would have prevented his confession from being used in court. Because of this, the police had to let the men go and the investigation was at a standstill again. Most likely the witnesses were simply intimidated, but without their testimony in court, the case had almost no chance. All we know is that one of them spent 8 months in jail for stealing items from Fawn's house. The case has since gone into a long drawer. The police didn't reopen the investigation until the early 2000s, and the first thing they did was upload DNA samples from the crime scene to the CODIS database. It had been created several years before and contained DNA samples from people tried for serious crimes. Unfortunately, no matches were found for the Fawn killer. The emergence of this database was the result of major scientific advances in the study of DNA. It also allowed police to recollect DNA samples from the 3 original suspects and conduct more advanced tests. This time, experts unequivocally determined that the hair, semen and blood did not belong to any of them. This was rather odd given the fact that the suspects were found in possession of Fawn's belongings. Detectives speculated that the three guys had indeed robbed her house at night, but there was another man with them. He was the one who had abused and killed the girl. All of this raised even more questions. Could it be that 4 criminals entered the house unnoticed, killed Fawn, and just as unnoticed left the scene of the crime? The police still had no answer to this question. Since then, the case has once again stalled. With each passing year, the Fawn family believed less and less that the murder would ever be solved. They continued to believe that those 3 suspects had been in their house that night and could point to the killer but would never do so. The only thing that could help them learn the truth was a DNA sample stored in the police lab. In 2018, something interesting happened. Amber, Fawn's younger sister, revealed some disturbing details about the crime that she had put into facts unknown to the police on a popular American forum for unsolved crimes. Over the 20 years of its existence, the forum had gained a very reliable reputation, and its participants have helped the police solve several high-profile cases. Amber has been verified and confirmed that she really is who she says she is, so her post is worthy of attention. She herself worked as a nanny from Monday to Friday and was only at home during the day on weekends. The girl slept in the very room on the 2nd floor through which the burglars had snuck in. Accordingly, the criminals would have been immediately spotted. In addition, they would have watched the house and waited until Fawn's mother and her younger sister went to pick up the girl from work. Despite all this, Amber's story didn't bring the case any closer to solving it, but it was already 2018 and the science of DNA research had come a long way. Dozens, if not hundreds of long-forgotten cases were being solved thanks to new analysis tools. Fawn's relatives saw it all and resented why the police were in no hurry to reopen the murder investigation. They kept talking to detectives about the case, and each time they got the same answer. Extended DNA testing requires money and the police have dozens of cases waiting for funding. But the relatives decided to take the initiative and launched a fundraiser. In 2019, the family wanted to cover the full cost of the DNA samples and also offered a $10,000 reward for any information that would lead to the perpetrator's capture. Due to the extensive media coverage of the case and numerous interviews given by the family, many people who cared responded to requests for help. The family quickly collected the necessary amount of money, but even here they were disappointed. The police department refused to initiate this investigation at the expense of the relatives of the victim. The lead detective explained that there was bound to be a big problem in such a situation. If the relatives of one victim could pay for such tests and expedite the results, and hundreds of other families who have been searching for years for the murder of their loved ones should have the same right. But it is simply impossible to implement such a thing in practice, since only a few laboratories in the world conduct innovative DNA tests, and with such a simultaneous influx of those wishing to do so, their resources are simply not enough. The leading company in this field is Parabon Nanolabs, which we have already repeatedly mentioned in other stories. They have made tremendous progress in the study of DNA, from finding a person's relatives from the smallest genetic samples to creating an approximate portrait of the owner of the DNA. It was this lab that was to take over the study of the samples left in Fawn's bedroom the night she was murdered. The girl's relatives believed that the police were in no hurry to pursue their case for another reason. They were a poor family from a bad neighbourhood, and murder was not a priority for investigators there. In an interview, Fawn's sister said that if it had been a murderer of a family of rich or high-ranking people, all the necessary investigations would have been done instantly. Unfortunately, they never managed to expedite the process, and it wasn't until late 2020 that the long-awaited breakthrough happened. But the family wasn't ready for that kind of truth. With funding from the FBI, the police did send samples from Fawn's room to a lab there. They began a detailed examination of DNA and a search for possible relatives of its possessor. It was the semen sample found at the murder scene that they mostly worked with. In November 2020, they were finally able to find the person to whom that DNA belonged. It turned out to be Fawn's cousin, Donald Cox. Of course, such news shocked the whole family. At the time of Fawn's death, Donald was 21 years old and no one had even considered his possible involvement. That said, Donald was a pretty troubled man and was constantly behind bars. He was tried for misdemeanours such as theft and possession of illegal substances. Unfortunately, in those years, they did not yet take a DNA sample from such criminals, otherwise this case would have been solved much earlier. Donald died of an overdose in 2006, but the police investigated his death because certain circumstances seemed suspicious to them. It was because of that investigation that a sample of his DNA was preserved, but it was not entered into the FBI database because the man in that case was a victim, not a perpetrator. Once the experts informed the police of their discovery, they matched the sample with the semen found at the murder scene and got a 100 match. Despite the gravity of this discovery, the relatives have received an answer to a question that has plagued them for 31 years, but there remained one very important point in the whole story. The great deal of evidence indicated that the three original suspects had also been in the Fawn house that night. It was now becoming clear how the perpetrators knew the house and the family's routine so precisely. Donald was a frequent visitor and knew all these nuances. However, the police closed the case and no new charges were filed against the three men. Fawn's sister said she saw no point in trying to get a confession out of them. Even though the men had been present in the house at night, they may not have even witnessed the murder itself. Donald may well have stayed in the house alone, only then attacked Fawn. Felicia added that the three suspects had already paid for their act throughout this time. While the case remained unsolved, the entire neighbourhood was 100% certain of their guilt because of this. They were treated very negatively, with all the consequences that would follow. According to Sister Fawn, their lives were effectively ruined. In addition, after the case was closed, it turned out that the police had originally learned about the suspects from the family of one of them. Relatives noticed a Nintendo set-top box among his belongings and remembered that this was the one that had been stolen from Fawn's house. It was on the news and everyone in the neighbourhood already knew the details. In any case, it is simply impossible to prove their guilt, and the relatives of the victim finally know the name of the killer. He lived for 17 years without any punishment for what he had done. In all that time, as if nothing had happened, he communicated with his family, but eventually his addiction to illegal substances drove him to his grave and he was no longer a threat to anyone. Share your opinion on this story in the comments and don't forget to like the video if you like it. In 1991 on Staten Island's East Shore, a tragic and gruesome discovery was made. A passerby stumbled upon the lifeless body of a woman bearing signs of brutal assault, strangulation and burning. The chilling scene unfolded just after dawn on September 20th, 1991, as the victim was found amidst overgrown weeds along a South Beach road. Her lifeless form lay face up, her wrist bound in handcuffs and her attire partially stripped away. A vacant lot served as the grim backdrop for this horrifying crime. The assailant had unleashed 17 savage blows to her head, and a hammer, engraved with the name Lloyd L., was discovered at the crime scene, suggesting its use in this heinous act. Alongside the victim's battered body, authorities recovered 2 gold chains, a ring, a watch, a meagre sum of 30 cents, and a pack of Newport cigarettes. Initially, the police faced a daunting challenge as they grappled with the unknown identity of both the perpetrator and the victim, leaving this chilling case unsolved. Though individual named Lloyd L. was identified, the investigation reached an impasse, with no conclusive evidence linking him to the crime. Given the circumstances, he could neither be prosecuted nor exonerated. For decades, the victim remained anonymous, her memory preserved only as the girl with the scorpion tattoo, a haunting reference to the distinctive scorpion tattoo etched on her body. In 2008, the District Attorney's Office reopened the case, submitting her DNA and dental records to the FBI, but it yielded no new leads. The case was revisited once more in 2019 when Richmond County District Attorney Michael E. McMahon, in collaboration with the FBI, NYPD and a New York medical examiner's office, employed cutting-edge forensic genealogy technology. During a press conference held in March 2023, Michael McMahon revealed the identification of the victim as 30-year-old Christine B. Coe. Christine had been placed for adoption as an infant and raised by a couple in New Jersey. She resided in Clifton and was employed at a clothing store. Upon discovering her adoption status in 1991, she left home and briefly stayed at the Mount A Lodge in Pennsylvania's Poconos. She had a 2-year-old daughter named Krista Nicole Beechew. Tragically, both Christine and Krista were last seen at the resort in September 1991. Shockingly, none of Christine's family members were aware of her untimely demise, believing she had been living safely in Florida. Michael McMahon conveyed, We have already informed Christine's family about her heartbreaking fate, and we are dedicated to locating Kristen Nicole as well, so that we can share with her the story of her mother and the steps taken to bring justice to this case. Despite the tireless efforts of the Neenai PD back then, the authorities were unable to identify her or locate the perpetrator who inflicted such a brutal and senseless tragedy on her at such a young age. Nearly 3 decades later, through the collaborative efforts of the FBI, my exceptional team of detective investigators, and the NIPD detectives, we reopened a case and harnessed the power of forensic genealogy technology, which was unavailable in 1991, but has proven invaluable in today's world of law enforcement, ultimately providing closure and justice to all those affected by this heinous crime. While the investigation is ongoing, Mahon stated that the investigators believe the perpetrator had a prior acquaintance with the victim. According to McMahon, there is clear evidence to suggest that the culprit was someone familiar with her. Given the circumstances surrounding the case and the manner in which her life was tragically ended, strongly points to the involvement of someone who had a close relationship with her. This appears to be a crime of intimacy, McMahon explained. An age progression photograph of Krista has been publicly released and efforts to locate her are still underway. Currently, there is no available information regarding Krista's biological father. If you have any knowledge about Kristen Nicole, or any information related to the tragic incident involving Christine B. Co., please contact the Richmond County District Attorney's Office at 718 556 7085. On September 16th, 1993, human remains were discovered in the woods behind a hotel located just outside Atlanta, Georgia. The grim find was concealed behind an electrical unit cleverly camouflaged by pine straw and branches, within a wooded area nestled between what was once a Fairfield Inn and an abandoned medical office. This sinister act appeared to be a deliberate effort to conceal the body, which had already deteriorated significantly due to advanced decomposition. Fast forward to the present day, and the inn, now known as Quality in North Lake, still stands, situated less than 20 miles northeast of downtown Atlanta. Following a thorough autopsy, it was determined that the remains belonged to a middle-aged woman. Given the state of decomposition, investigators estimated that the woman's life had been taken somewhere between 2 weeks and 3 months prior to the discovery. No identification was found alongside the body. Despite initial investigations revealing that the victim had undergone extensive dental work and hip replacement surgery, potentially affecting her gait, the lack of further details regarding her identity resulted in a stall case. However, a breakthrough finally came in March 2023 when the DeKalb County District Attorney's Office made a significant announcement. They successfully identified the Jane Doe as 52-year-old Rebecca Becky Burke. This identification was made possible through the application of forensic genetic genealogy, an advanced DNA testing method involving the collaboration of the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System and OTHRUM, a specialised company in forensic genealogy dedicated to solving cold cases. Forensic genetic genealogy, a fusion of traditional genealogical research and DNA analysis, plays a crucial role in identifying individuals, both suspects and victims, in criminal cases where conventional identification methods have proven ineffective. The District Attorney's Office has disclosed that these tests successfully linked Becky's remains to a family member, facilitating a deeper understanding of her and her background. Authorities suggest that Becky may have also gone by the last names Ms. Neil Barnes, with her last known residence believed to be in either the Marietta or Smyrna area of Cobb County, Georgia. A dedicated cold case task force is actively seeking information regarding a potential suspect. DeKalb County District Attorney Sherry Boston is urging anyone who had knowledge of Becky or had connections to the inn where her body was discovered during that period to reach out to law enforcement. Sherry Boston emphasised in a statement, "We're immensely grateful to have finally identified Becky Burke's remains, but our work does not conclude here." Becky Burke was described as a Caucasian individual with long, curly, light brown hair, standing approximately 5'5" tall and weighing close to 130 lbs. If you possess any information regarding the circumstances surrounding Becky's final days, please do not hesitate to contact our cold case tip line at 404 371 2561.